Hey friends, it's John. You're on the JRB Tree Climbing channel. This gizmo is the JRB Cinch. We take a bite of rope, pass it through the ring. We take this carabiner, which we couldn't possibly drop because it's tethered on. We click it through, and we've got a secure, stable cinching anchor to the tree. And we can take that anchor, we can advance it up the tree with the use of our Maverick pole. The same pole we use to advance the Maverick hitch up the tree, we can use to advance the JRB Cinch. And lastly, it's remotely retrievable. We take our retrieval line, which has got a loop on the end, could have a clip. We open the carabiner, put it on, and then after a rappel, we take our nice long retrieval cord and we walk away from the tree. We don't pull down. Some folks have had trouble retrieving this, pulling down because this binds. We pull away. And when we pull away, this is how retrieval takes place. Now, if you've got a JRB Cinch and you are happy with it, I've got no reason for you to change what you are using. But you're going to see me in some upcoming videos using a system with a JRB Cinch on both sides. And if you've got a JRB Cinch on both sides, there's going to be some scenarios whereby we need to remove a JRB Cinch because it simply wouldn't be retrievable or wouldn't pass through some tight passage in the tree. And we're going to need to put it back on. And all the improvements that I've made are all focused on that direction. Okay, so here are the changes. This hitch, which was originally a buffalo hitch, is now a moose hitch, which I recently introduced. This umbilical tether that connects the carabiner to the hitch, it's connected in a different location and with a different knot. The prior version used a scaffold or poacher's knot, and simply put, it could get too tight to be easily removed. And the last change, and this is optional, is I figured out a way that I can make it nice and quiet. There's no metal on metal because I have put a piece of tubular webbing over half of my carabiner and taped it on the other sides. I don't go all the way around, and the reason why is at time of retrieval I have the option of reorienting this carabiner. And if I reorient it and retrieve it like this, well, now the rope is running not on the tubular webbing, it's running on the metal carabiner. It's just a bit smoother to retrieve. So that's a summary of the changes. Let's build one. Okay, let's start with what we need to create a JRB Cinch. Here I have one tied on 8mm rope with a small rappel ring, and you just saw the larger version on 10mm rope. I've got links to these Omega Pacific rappel rings on my website, jrbtreeclimbing.com, along with product recommendations and a discount. This is the Omega Pacific D style carabiner, and I like this because the way it sits in the ring. Now, this option to put some tubular webbing, this is 1-inch tubular webbing. That's pretty obvious, but I just cut a few inches of it and put some tape in 2 locations. You might prefer to use tape on the whole thing, or you might not care about noise. I understand hockey tape works really well, and literally any kind of tape to avoid that contact and turn it into that is going to work. But if you've already got some carabiners in your arsenal, here's one of my favorite carabiners for rappel. These are pear-shaped carabiners. These are going to work too. I prefer triple action over screw gates, but if you've got some old screw gates and you're willing to accept the responsibility to always close them, they're going to work great as well. But I like to use a carabiner that's got a fair-sized cross-section and not anything that's too thin or bladed. This is a 36-inch length, a 4mm accessory cord. The retrieval cord I showed you earlier, that was also 4mm cord, and this stuff is available in some pretty awesome camo colors. I just used the high visibility stuff because I want it to come out well on camera. You could use a different diameter, you just might need another inch or two. I've just measured 8 inches from here to here, to 8-inch loop, and I'm going to form an overhand knot carefully with both strands on the end, creating an overhand end loop. Sure, we could have created a figure 8, but there's just really no need for something that strong or complex. This is going to work fine. I simply am very careful to make sure that overhand is nice and symmetrical. And now I'm going to repeat the process on the other side. It will be identical and symmetrical. That's another 8-inch length. And I'm just spacing those out so the tail is roughly the size of the loop. I can fit a couple of fingers through there on both sides. That's perfect. Give that a tug on both sides. And if I've done my job properly and I measure this, it comes out somewhere between 15 and 16 inches. That's perfect. Let's put that aside. Let's grab our rope and let's tie a moose hitch. Well, I call this the loose moose hitch. See my video for tying the moose hitch in variants. It starts with a poacher's knot. That's a poacher's knot, not set very tight. And because I want to incorporate my tether inside, the first step is I'm going to drop that tether over the loop. Next, I'll grab my rappel ring and drop it over the loop. I'll now take the loop created by the poacher's knot. I'll reach through the back of it and I'm going to grab the ring. But before I cinch it tight, I'll take the umbilical tether and stick it through. So this is a moose hitch, but it's got the tether embedded inside of it. And the last point about finishing the loose moose is to take the tail and bring it through like that. Give this a tug. See how easy that was? And now I'll take my carabiner and place it on the loop. I have just constructed JRB Cinch. Goes on the tree immediately. It doesn't really matter which way you attach the carabiner. I've been doing it this way lately, and now it's set on the tree. Want to see that again? We'll start by creating a poacher's knot. I orient it such that the two parallel bars are facing me and the crossing bars are in the back, and I extend that loop a bit. I then take my tether, put it over that loop. I then grab my rappel ring, put it over the top, and then I pull the ring through. But not only the rings, also the tether goes through. I bring this down and capture the tail, and I give that a tug. That's the loose moose. Moose hitch with what I call the loose variant on the end. We finish it differently for a carabiner. And the last piece is putting on our carabiner. We affix it to the tree this way, put a bite through, open the carabiner and cinch it on. Now I have built on 10mm rope, I built it using the small rappel ring. It just doesn't operate as efficiently. And so you can use that. It just gets a little bound up here and a little bit difficult to manipulate and to retrieve. But what's important about this is that in certain scenarios, we might need to take this apart and rebuild it. And here's how I take it apart. I simply reverse the process. But it's important that you rehearse this, because if you have not built or deconstructed or reconstructed one in some time, you might be a little bit rusty. It's something fun you can do while you're in the tree. Even you can have a little piece of rope and a ring and occupy yourself while you're waiting for old mossy horns to come on by. You can practice your knots, you can practice your cinch. But here's how I deconstruct it. I break the moose hitch, which is always fairly easy to do, and then I pass it over the tail. Pop the ring through. I'll leave my carabiner on here because if I was doing this in the woods, I wouldn't want to drop anything. And look, I have now I've removed the girth hitch inside of the moose hitch. I remove my ring. I remove my tether, and I spill the poacher's knot, and I can put it together that quickly. There are some scenarios where we don't get lucky in retrieval of a system, and so I wanted to have a quick way to construct the JRB cinch, and I think we've done it. While we're in tight, my retrieval line is also 4mm cord. Now, I used an overhand end loop here because I thought it was the easiest for you to tie. If you're a fan of the bowline, just crank it up to a double bowline. That's what I have here. This is a double bowline. This could have been a double bowline. I just found that to be easier, and it's not like we have to untie it. But my retrieval cord has got a loop of similar size on both ends. And so and it's not the end of the world if you forget to reorient this, but you can reorient this and put your retrieval line here. And it doesn't really matter which way the carabiner is. Just pick your favorite direction, and then it'll start to retrieve. In retrieval, though, there's a lot of friction, and so don't be afraid to get a firm grip on this. You've got this other end of the rope as you're walking away from the tree. Well, if you've got a spare carabiner, you can put that carabiner on this loop and get a really strong grip. And I've had to exert effort in retrieving this off of a rough bark tree, but I've never been unable to do it. So remember, if you're using a small diameter cord, your fingers are going to take a lot of cutting friction. Use a handle, use a carabiner on the other end. It'll be easier to retrieve. Okay, so look for a double-ended system real soon. Thanks, guys.